Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Dark World deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Wesley. And this deck is an amazing deck that just got an awesome new boss monster, Chaos King of Dark World, which can actually board wipe your opponent when it's summoned, which is insane. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. And definitely give Wesley some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one, guys. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Rainbow Over King of Dark World. This card is an awesome 3-of boss monster. It has the ability you can special summon this card from your grave by returning a level 7 or lower Dark World monster you control back to your hand, which is an awesome effect to be able to get more cards in your hand so you can discard different Dark Worlds and get their effects to go off. And if this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add a level 5 or higher Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card, which is an awesome ability just to be able to get the exact card you need to your hand, like your copies of Grapha, Silver, or any of the other cards that you might need. We then play 2 copies of Grapha. Grapha is definitely a 2-of in the build. It's so easy to get to, it's searchable, and it has an awesome ability. If it's in your graveyard, you can actually return a Dark World monster from your side of the field back to your hand to special summon this card from the grave, and if it's discarded to the grave, it can actually pop a card your opponent controls, which is a great ability. We then play a single copy of Rainbow Overlord of Dark World. Now, the reason we actually play this one is because of the new Chaos King. You do have to use it as a fusion material to be able to summon out the new Chaos King, which is why we play this card as a 1-of in the build. But it's still really good because if it's discarded from your hand to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you special summon this card. And if this card is special summoned this way, destroy all monsters or all spells and traps that your opponent controls, which is a great ability. Because we actually have cards like Ceruli that can actually discard this card to the graveyard as if it was an opponent's card effect, so we can use that effect. We then play 2 copies of Silva. Silva is really good in this deck to help you hand rip your opponent. If it's discarded to the graveyard, you do get to special summon it from the grave back to your side of the field. And if it's discarded by an opponent's card effect, you do get to put 2 cards in your opponent's hand back on the bottom of the deck in any order, which is insane because you can actually hand rip your opponent and deal with your opponent's entire hand with this build, which is absolutely crazy. We then play 3 copies of Snow. Snow is definitely a 3-of because this card is actually the searcher of the deck. If this card is discarded, you get to add a Dark World card from your deck to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Genta. Genta is amazing in this deck because this card is actually basically like terraforming, that you have the ability that you can discard this card to add a copy of the Gates of the Dark World from your deck to your hand, which is an amazing effect to be able to do. And if this card is banished and you control a copy of Dark World card, you can special summon this card. But this card is actually the only once per turn Dark World monster in the entire deck that has the ability that you can only special summon this Genta once per turn, which is not that big of a deal because basically you're just going to summon it once anyways and then bounce it back to your hand with a copy of, say, Rainbow or Grapha to be able to discard it again to grab another copy of Gates. We then play 3 copies of Brow. Brow is kind of like Upstart Goblin for the deck, that if this card is discarded, you get to draw an additional card, which is amazing. We then play a single copy of Ceruli. Ceruli is really good as a 1-of in the deck because this card helps you work with your copy of Silva, because this card has the ability, if this card is discarded to the grave by a card effect, special summon this card from your graveyard to your opponent's side of the field in face-up defense position, and when this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dark World card, basically its own effect, your opponent must discard a card, meaning we discard a card since it's on our opponent's side of the field, so we can discard something like a copy of Silva to be able to hand rip our opponent for 2 cards, which is really good. We then play for the Dangers. We're going to start with a single copy of Danger Bigfoot. Danger Bigfoot is really good as a 1-of in the deck because it is a level 8 monster, and it has the ability, like all of your other Danger monsters, if you reveal this card in your hand, your opponent randomly chooses 1 card from your entire hand to discard, and you discard that chosen card. Then if this card was not the Danger that you revealed, you special summon the Danger and then draw a card, but all of your Dangers have unique abilities that if they're discarded, they go off. For example, your copy of Danger Bigfoot is if this card is discarded, then you target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a great effect to pop a card on the field. We then play 2 copies of Danger Nessie. Danger Nessie is really good as a 2-of in the build. You don't want to play 3 because it's just really not needed at 3. And it has the ability that if this card is discarded, you get to add a danger card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of Nessie. We then play 2 copies of Danger Mothman. Danger Mothman is great as a 2-of in the deck, and it has the ability, if this card is discarded, both players draw a card and both players discard a card, which is insane for this card to be able to do because it helps us with a lot of our Dark World cards. We then play a single copy of Chupacabra. Chupacabra is awesome in this deck as a 1-of, because if this card is discarded, it's a monster reborn to let you target a danger monster in the graveyard and special summon it, except a copy of Chupacabra. We then play a single copy of Jackalope. Jackalope's great as a 1-of because it has the ability, if this card is discarded, you special summon a danger from the deck in defense position, which is great to get any of your danger monsters you want on your side of the field. And finally, play a single copy of Danger Tsuchinoko. Danger Tsuchinoko, or Danger Noodle, has the ability, if this card is discarded, you special summon it anyway. So basically, if you reveal this, you're always going to special it, which is a great effect. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of Card Destruction. Card Destruction is one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck, because both players discard their entire hand and then draw the same number of cards that they discarded, but it's going to make all of our Dark World monsters go off, which is crazy. This card is definitely a 1-of in the deck. We then play a single copy of the Dark World Fusion spell. This card is awesome because it helps us go in for a copy of Colorless during our opponent's turn, because it is a quick play, which is so helpful, with the ability that during the main phase you get to fusion summon a Fiend Fusion monster from your extract by banishing materials mentioned on it from your field or grave. And if fusion summoning a Dark World monster this way, you can also discard monsters as material, which is great because it's going to make our Dark World cards go off. And during your main phase, if this card's in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand and then discard a Dark World monster, but you only use each effect of this card once per turn. But this card is definitely a 1-of in the build. It is searchable, which is why we just play a single copy, but it's awesome to be able to use to just set to your side of the field and go in for your Chaos King during your opponent's turn. We then play a single copy of Archives. Archives is great in the deck as a 1-of because it helps you discard cards. It has the ability during your main phase, you can discard a Dark World monster, and if you do, Dark World monsters that you currently control gain attack equal to that monster's level of the discarded monster had in the hand times 100 until the end of the turn. And also it has an insane ability that if a monster whose original type is Fiend is discarded from your hand by the effect of a Dark World card or an opponent's card effect, even during the damage step, then you can discard a card to draw 2 cards, but you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. We then play 2 copies of Dark Corridor. Dark Corridor is a great 2-of in the build because this card is basically Rhoda for the deck. That you add a Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, then discard a card, but you can only activate 1 of this card per turn, which is why we just play 2 copies because it's so easy to get to in the deck. But it isn't searchable in the deck because it is just a spell, so it's just called Dark Corridor. It's not a Dark World card, so you're just using this card basically like a Rhoda. We then play 3 copies of the Gates of the Dark World. The Gates of the Dark World is insane as a field spell, and this card is not a once per turn. That all Fiend type monsters gain 300 attack and defense, and once per turn you banish a Fiend from the grave, discard a Fiend from your hand, and then draw a card, which makes our Dark World monsters go off, and makes your copy of Jinta go off to special summon itself back to your side of the field once per turn. We then play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. Allure of Darkness is definitely a 3-of in the build because this card just helps you dig into the deck for the exact card you need by just banishing a card from your hand, and it makes your copy of Jinta go off because it is banished, which is really good. We then play 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. Upstart Goblin is just really good now that this card is back at 3 because it helps us draw an additional card and thins the deck a little bit. And we're not too worried about establishing a lot of damage on board because it's very easy to get a bunch of monsters on board to be able to OTK our opponent. And this card is really good in the deck. So basically play a 37 card deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start with a single copy of Colorless Chaos King of Dark World. This card is awesome and just came out of Maze of Millennia, and it's really good to be able to play in this deck because it does require a copy of Rainbow Overlord of Dark World plus 2 Fiend monsters to make this card. And if this card is fusion summon, you destroy all cards that your opponent controls, and this card's original attack and defense becomes the number of materials used for this card summoned times 1,000, and once per turn you can target one face-up card that you control and discard a card. Also, your opponent cannot target that monster or target that card face-up card with card effects for the rest of the turn, which is a great effect. But this card is just an awesome boss monster to be able to play in the deck. We then play 2 copies of Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World. This card is an insane boss monster, a definite 2 in the build, and usually you're just summoning 1, but you do have the option for the second one. It's great in this deck because it does require a copy of Grapha plus any dark monster to make this card, and when your opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell or trap card, while you have a card in your hand, quick effect, you can activate this effect. The activated effect becomes your opponent discards a card, meaning we discard a card and basically negates our opponent's card effect while we're getting some advantage off this card. And it also replaces itself with a copy of Grapha if it is basically destroyed, which is a great effect. We then play a single copy of Underworld Goddess. Underworld Goddess is great to be able to basically deal with towers-like monsters that your opponent might have. We play a single copy of Nightmare Griffin because we do Griffin lock in this build because it is a fiend, so you can lock yourself into fiends in this deck. And this card is great to be able to put a copy of Mudracker, pointing to this card to basically fiend lock your opponent and recycle cards like Dark Corridor, because when this card is summoned to your side of the field, you can discard a card and then you get to place a spell or trap from your grave back on your side of the field face down, or set it to your side of the field, but it cannot be activated this turn. And this card also lets you draw a card if it's co-linked, which is great to help you dig into the deck. And it also has the ability to special summon monsters on the field that cannot activate their effects unless they are linked, meaning a card is pointing to them with a link arrow, which is a great effect to be able to put this card on your side of the field because you're basically going to have a one-sided skill drain. We then play a single copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is just great just in case we need to establish multiple monster negates on our side of the field, and this card is just awesome. We then play a single copy of Nightmare Phoenix to pop spells and traps, and a single copy of Nightmare Cerberus to pop monsters. These cards are really good because they're both fiends, plus their arrows are really nice, and they do require us to discard cards, which is really nice to be able to use with our Dark Worlds. We then play a single copy of SP Little Knight. You can change this card out for Nightmare Unicorn. You don't have to play SP Little Knight. You can change it out for Nightmare Unicorn if you want to, which is a great option to be able to do in this deck to make sure that you're going to have a more budget time and more budget friendly. But if you do have SP Little Knight, you can use this card as a double interruption. You can play a single copy of Akashic Magician. Akashic Magician is to boost or to basically bounce our copy of Ceruli back to hand so that we can use its ability again to discard a copy of Silva so we can go in and rip 2 more cards out of our opponent's hand. We play a single copy of Mudracker. Mudracker is just awesome in this deck as one of because you can use this card extremely easily to be able to Griffin lock our opponent. And this card is actually the card that Fiend locks us, and it has the ability that you can target a Fiend monster in your grave except a copy of Mudracker, discard a card, and if you special summon that monster, also you cannot special summon monsters for rest turn except fiends, which does lock us into fiend monsters. But once you establish this card on your side of the field, you're basically just going for the Griffin lock to be able to establish these 2 cards on your side of the field, with this card being in one of your link zones or in the extra monster zone, plus this card being pointing to it in the main monster zone under it, which is really good to be able to do to basically have a one-sided skill drain. We made a single copy of Coach King. Coach King is great because you basically draw a card, inflicts 800 points of damage to your opponent, and you do that 3 times per turn, which is crazy. We then play a single copy of Baguska. Baguska is also Fiend just in case we need to slow down the game. Play a single copy of Number 60. Number 60 is a draw 2, discard 1, double the attack of a monster that we control, or bring back a monster from the graveyard, which is just insane. And finally, play a single copy of Typhon. Typhon's really good in the deck because it also is a Fiend, and it's just a really powerful card to be able to make in just about any deck, and it's such a powerful boss monster in this build because it is a Fiend and it's very easy to make. So that's it for this one, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. I really love the new Chaos King because it is a board wipe. It's very easy to establish. You do have to play that old school Rainbow to be able to summon it, which is a little bit of a downside because you're kind of playing a brick to be able to do it, but it's still really cool to be able to summon to your side of the field. You could probably side it if you wanted to be able to side the copy of Colorless and Rainbow just in case you were going to go second, but it's still really good in the deck, in the main deck, to be able to summon to your side of the field. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.